Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to look at Koto's speaking exam. We're going to give some feedback and give her some scores. So let's dive right in. So, good morning. My name is Glyn. Would you tell me your full name, please?
Okay, my name is Koto, Koto.
So with full name, we expect first name and surname, and then the next question is, and what should I call you? But okay. Thank you. And in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Do you work or do you study?
Okay, that is Boris correct.
So a little bit defensive. Now, I always tell my students that there's kind of like a fifth criteria, right? So, of course, we have our fluency and coherence, we have our lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, pronunciation. But the fifth one is the impression that you make on the examiner. In the Cambridge tests, they have a separate score, global achievement, and part of this is like how good are you as a test taker? How easy is it to work with you? Do you fight against me or do you refuse to give some answers to some questions? And immediately starting with like, that's secret information just feels a little bit like, come on, it's not secret. It's, you're going to have to answer this question. Do you work or do you study? It's not a very personal question, so there's no need to fight against it.
I'm student in Japan. I'm a university student in Tokyo, but now I stopped my university for 1 year.
Okay, so some nice bits of pronunciation, like university. She has this non-prevocalic R, this rhotic, this American R. University, university, university. So some good stuff. She had a mispronunciation with year, where she said like ear or something. Let's just check that again.
And in Tokyo, but now I stopped my university for 1 year
For one ear. So not quite right there, but okay. But some good pronunciation features already.
to come to Australia to study English, like to use working holiday visa.
And again, it's tough for Japanese students because they just can't get that LR thing right? So we get English, working holiday visa. So I don't think I will punish it too much, but it is just an example that there isn't a full range of phonological features because I already know at this point that we're going to have a lot of mistakes with these L's and R's.
So now I don't have a school, just working now.
And in terms of a full answer, this is a very, very full answer. So that's a very positive trait that already I know that I won't need to fight with her to get full answers, that she's ready to give these longer answers by herself. Cool. And what did you study in Tokyo?
I'm studying about business.
Okay, what did you study? So she said that she studied in Tokyo and now she's taking a year off. So I use past simple. What did you study in Tokyo? And she answers with present continuous. I am studying. So, grammatical mismatch there.
And my major is business, but I'm studying about English and Chinese, but I can speak Chinese, just English. Yeah, I'm studying the languages and business.
So there's a little bit of uncertainty about how she should finish, right? It feels like she's given enough of a long answer, right? Maybe I was studying business, but also I was studying English and Chinese, but I can't really speak Chinese very well. And then that's enough to end it. But then she feels like she's not sure if she should end it there, and then she just continues a little bit more, and it feels like an unsatisfying end to the question. So once you feel like you've given a full answer, just stop it there. Don't let that inner voice that tells you like say a little bit more, say a little bit more. If you feel like your answer is full, end it with confidence. It's fine. Why did you choose business?
Because my father's major was business, and that was my dream. I already changed my dream, and when I was high
Okay, why did you choose business? Because my father's major was business? Maybe that's a reason. It was my dream. Okay.
School student, I thought I want to be a like accountant or like
Accounter? I think she means an accountant. So I don't know if that's a pronunciation mistake or a vocab mistake. Sounds to me like a vocab mistake.
to use some business things like
So, not quite enough vocab here to use some business things. What do you mean business things? Do you mean like management training? Do you mean like the ability to negotiate? Do you mean things like marketing and promoting products and services? Do you mean like business administration? Do you mean setting up contracts? All of that's very, very good topical language that we can use to talk about business things, but she just doesn't find any of it.
yeah, very difficult to explain like
Very difficult to explain. So, normally, when students tell me it's very difficult to explain, normally with students it means they don't have enough vocabulary, right? And it's a way of saving their pride because they say, oh, it's just difficult to explain. It's not that I don't have enough language, it's just difficult to explain, right? What did you do last weekend? Well, it's just difficult to explain. Okay, what are your plans for next week? Oh, I don't know. Okay, cool. What do you do in your free time? Well, I don't have any free time. Okay, if you had free time, what would you do? It's difficult to explain. So again, this is fighting against the examiner, fighting against the questions. It's difficult to explain. Well, sorry, this is your test. This is your opportunity to show the world or to show the examiner your English skills by saying it's difficult to explain. You're just closing doors for yourself.
I wanted to study business, but now I changed my dream. I really like to study English and
So I really like, not very like, very with adjectives, right? Very good, very bad, very with adverbs, very quickly, very slowly, very politely, but not with verbs. I very like, I really like is fine.
I want to study another languages too. So
So, singular and plural, this is going to come up a lot. I want to study another languages. Well, another means one. I want to study another language. Some other, with plural. I want to study some other languages. I want to study another language, like French. I want to study some other languages, like French and Spanish, but not another languages. So, singular and plurals, I think we're going to see a lot of these mistakes in this test.
yeah, I want to change the major now.
And again, she's finished her answer. I'm getting ready to ask the next question, but again, that little voice in her head says, "Say something more. Say something more." Don't. Once your answer is fully finished, that's fine. You can just stop speaking. And what would you like to do in the future when you finish studying?
Uh, like I didn't decide yet, but I want to get the work. I want to get a job like to use English, or I want to live in other countries, like not Japan.
I want to live in other countries. Maybe seems like another country. It's not possible to live in many different countries, at least not at the same time. So again, singular, plural. Naturally, I'd like to live in another country. I'd like to live not in Japan.
But if I can, I want to live America because my father.
So this is a problem for me too. I want to live America. So we use prepositions to say where, right? Where is the cup? The cup is on the table. Where do you live? I live in America. I live next to a bank, for example, right? Prepositions help us to say where. I want to live America. I want to live in America. It's very basic grammar. We teach this at elementary.
Father's university is America.
My father's university is America. Well, congratulations that America, the country or the continent even, is your father's university. I think you mean your father's university is in America. Again, that preposition that tells us where. Very basic.
So I want to try to go America to study English.
We also use prepositions to say where, not as in where as in the place, but where as in the movement. Where I want to go across the road, I want to go over the bridge, I want to go up the stairs, and I want to go to America, not I want to go America. I want to go home, fine, exception, but go to America. So where, location, I want to live in America. Go, direction, I want to go to America. Again, prepositions of movement, we teach them at A1, A2.
Sure, like to work.
Okay, thanks. So let's move on now and talk about your hometown. What kind of place is your hometown?
Okay, my hometown is Yokohama. Do you know Yokohama?
So in part one, I don't advise asking the examiner questions. In part three, you're welcome to interact with the examiner more because part three is a discussion. Part one is an interview. It means the examiner will ask questions and you will answer, and that's it. I give an answer here because I'm a human, but don't be surprised if in the real test in part one you ask the examiner a question and they just sit and look at you and don't give a response. So part one, just answer the question. I've heard of it, yeah.
Yokohama is next to Tokyo, very close to Tokyo. Maybe
Yeah, very close. Again, we're missing this L.
1 hour, no, 30 minutes by train, very close. And Yokohama has a lot of beautiful seas and very
Beautiful, beautiful seas. Seas like the big body of water. I guess that's what she means.
good sightseeing spot. A
That's really nice sightseeing spot. I really like that. A lot of nice sightseeing spots. I don't know if she used the singular or the plural, but I like that item of vocab. It's very specific. Cool.
lot of foreigners come to Yokohama to see that. And very
Some examples of those sightseeing spots would be really nice for vocab too. So if there are lots of seas there, if there are sightseeing spots, do you mean like bays and harbours or ports or things like that? So that's a way of extending and using some more good vocab.
Yokohama. Yeah.
And what kind of jobs do people in Yokohama do?
Okay. That is a very difficult question. Like,
Again, so I like Koto's general demeanor, right? I like the way that she smiles. I like that she's super positive. I like the intonation in her voice. She's very easy to speak to. But I don't like the fact that there are so many. That's a very difficult question. Well, okay, but these are IELTS questions. I'm sorry if they are difficult questions. Now, again, maybe Koto is just saying that's a very difficult question. What to give her some time to think about how she's going to answer. But I advise my students just to be a bit more open about verbalizing, like, oh, I'm haven't really thought about that. What kind of jobs? Well, I guess, people in towns and cities, they all do the same kind of jobs, right? Like you have a lot of people that work in the service sector, so you have like waiters and waitresses, but of course you have a lot of companies that require different types of jobs like salespeople and HR, and directors and managers and things like this. So verbalizing your thoughts, even if the questions are difficult or sometimes a little silly. For me, it seems like a silly question. What kind of people work in your hometown? Because, mostly it's the same from city to city. But those are the questions, and we have to answer them even if we think they are difficult. And constantly repeating that's a difficult question can leave a bad impression on the examiner.
I think Yokohama has a lot of skyscrapers, like a lot of companies in there. So workers come to Yokohama to work.
Workers come to Yokohama to work. Now, there is a reason for every question in IELTS, right? We have a group of people whose special job it is to make questions, and there's always some idea behind there. Now, usually it could be a grammatical idea, it could be a vocab idea, it could be a more functional idea like agreeing or disagreeing or expressing opinion. But in the question, what kind of jobs do people do? There's an obvious vocab theme here. That's professions, jobs, right? So, we're looking for words like engineers or, I don't know, office workers or administrators or waiters and waitresses or flight attendants or any builders, plumbers, electricians. All of those words are words that can hit and score. Really, the question is, Can you show me that you have some vocabulary connected to work specifically? Can you tell me a wide range of jobs? If you can tell me common and less common jobs, great. Or you can say a lot of workers work, which again just doesn't really impress.
Or a lot. Yes. So I can say what job is it? Like just workers come.
Just workers. Okay.
Or very difficult. Like if I live in like more countryside, I can talk about the jobs more
Well, say that. Talk about some of those jobs in the countryside. Give me some vocab. Show off your English. I know a lot of these words.
clearly or more easily, but Yokohama is very town, a very big town, so very difficult to explain about this.
Okay. Again, that L is a killer, isn't it? Difficult to explain. Uh, just every time we need an L, we get an R. Do you think Yokohama is a good place to live?
Yeah, I really think so because
Very think so. Again, we don't use very with verbs. I really think so. Oh, absolutely.
Yokohama is very big city, so very convenient to live. Like
V and the but is an interesting one. I think we had it with a previous Japanese speaking candidate. V and a but convenient. It isn't convenient, but it's convenient. So again, maybe that's another aspect of a phonological feature that isn't quite there. That difference between the but and the v.
the supermarket and the big shopping center and everything in Yokohama. But I think Tokyo is more good prices to live.
Prices. So again, we have two problems. Again, we have the L and the R. She's trying to say it's a better place. Again, we have the singular and the plural. Tokyo is a place. It is not a places. It is a place. And this singular and plural repeatedly is going to come up. Also, comparative. Good, better. It's a better place to live. Now, I'm sure you know this. But it's just example of very basic grammar that we're getting wrong.
Like more convenient things in Tokyo.
Do you hear it? Convenient. Convenient.
But Yokohama we can go to Tokyo very easily, like
Yeah, you've told me this already.
30 minutes by train.
30 minutes by train. It's something you've already mentioned. We don't like repetition of ideas too much. Usually it means when we're measuring fluency, we want to understand if the student can extend their answers and speak at length without needing to repeat their ideas so much.
So I think very good price to live. And Yokohama has a lot of nature too.
Again, like a very good place to live. Would be a great place to end it. Now I'm getting ready to speak, and this happens quite a few times in part one. Just as I'm getting ready to speak, Koto adds something else. And again, in terms of the impression mark as an examiner, it can be a little bit annoying. Like, okay, we are doing a practice test. It's not annoying for me. But imagine if you have an examiner, they have a strict time limit. They have to give, 10 tests a day or 20 tests a day. And every time they are going to speak, the candidate just says something more. I could imagine that it can be quite annoying. Okay, thank you. Now, in this next part of the test... Okay, so that's the end of part one. I've been quite negative, but I should mention some positive things. So first of all, Koto does show a willingness to extend her answers, and she has enough vocab to deal with the questions, with most of the questions. There were a few missed opportunities, like talking about business-related things or speaking about what type of jobs people do. So a couple of missed opportunities, but in general, on the whole, Koto has absolutely no problems with her vocab to speak about personal topics. She can extend her answer, no problem there. A couple of small problems with those pronunciation features, with the l and with the v. And in terms of grammar, a lot of very basic mistakes, not using prepositions, not just getting the preposition wrong, but just not using any prepositions, and also singular and plurals, mixing up place and places. Also, there were a few other things like articles, like I have good job or something like that instead of a good job. But if there are really basic mistakes with grammar, then I stop thinking about the more complicated mistakes, and I don't notice any complex structures. I didn't hear any piece of grammar that I thought, oh wow, that's an impressive bit of grammar. So certainly some work to be done there. So at this stage, in my head, I already know what score I'm going to give her. Oh, I should also mention positive things about pronunciation. Some of her aspects of connected speech are very nice. She has an American English influence on her speech, but I love the way that she chunks words together and that she has a natural flow, and her pace of speaking is very good. Even her disfluencies and her hesitations, they seem to be fairly natural. So I already know that pronunciation is going to be her strongest point, despite that problem with L and R. And I know things are probably not going to get much better in part 2 and part 3. So in my mind here, I've already made kind of a decision about what score I'm going to give her. And this is something, I don't know if examiners will be honest about this, but this is something that we all do as examiners. Within the first kind of 2 minutes, you have an idea, okay, this person is this score. She is a 6. And then you think, okay, if in part 2 and part 3 she does better than expected, maybe I'll give her a 7. If she does worse than expected, I'll drop it to a 5. But after 2 minutes, sometimes even after 1 minute, if you've been teaching for so long, sometimes you only need to hear one sentence to kind of, get a 90% accurate prediction of that person's a C1 or a B2 or a B1. Even if you can't explain everything why, you just know that they're an intermediate or an upper intermediate or advanced. So at the moment, I'm thinking she's a 6. But let's see how she does in part 2. Test. I'm going to give you a topic, and I would like you to speak about this topic for 1 to 2 minutes. But before that, you will have 1 minute to prepare for your talk, and you may take notes if you wish. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Great. I will now share the topic on my screen. I would
Okay.
like you to describe something you own which is very important to you. That's a very common IELTS Part 2 question. Something you own which is very important to you. Okay. So whenever I see the word important, I always think that opens doors for a bunch of different vocab, like it's very valuable, or I don't know, maybe not highly rated. Sometimes with questions we get, with synonyms of important, we get words like critical or essential or significant, but I don't know, maybe meaningful, words like this. But it's just a tiny minor point. Koto is free to answer this in whichever way she wants, but I want to see some organization here. So far, in responding to questions, she speaks and then she stops and then she just adds a little bit at the end. So it would be really nice to see a well-prepared and free-flowing 2 minutes of organized monologue here, and that would push me back to thinking maybe I should consider giving her a 7. But let's see what we get. So your
Okay.
1 minute of preparation time starts now. Great editing. Okay, so that's the end of your preparation time. To remind you,
Okay.
you have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, so don't worry if I stop you at the end. Can you start speaking now, please?
Okay. So I will start it.
I really like her okay, actually. It's like, okay. It sounds almost British. Okay. It's really nice.
like to talk about my shoes. One of my shoes.
So immediately, the singular and plural, right? A lot of people might think, well, it's not a big deal, is it? You understand what they're saying if you say, like, I don't know, I have 1 cups or something, but one of my shoes. So in my mind, immediately, instinctively, I'm thinking she's just talking about one of her shoes. She means a pair of shoes, but she's saying one of my shoes, which now I understand cognitively when I reflect on it. I understand she means a pair of shoes, but instinctively, when somebody says one of my shoes, I can't help but laugh on the inside.
Maybe you know Dr. Martin. I really like Dr. Martin and my shoes. I have now too.
I have now two. So like she had one Dr. Martens shoe and now she has two Dr. Martens shoes. So she means now I have two pairs of Dr. Martens shoes, but she doesn't have that vocab or awareness to express that. And again, we got very like, which again is weak grammar.
And Dr. Martin's sandal is very important to me
Dr. Martens sunder? Sunder? Is she saying sandals? I don't know if Dr. Martens makes sandals, but I heard sunder. So I don't know what that is.
because my friend gave me for birthday present, and I'm now 20 years old. And last year, my friend gave me Dr. Martin to celebrate my birthday, 20th birthday. The 20th birthday is very important in Japan.
Okay, so thinking about irrelevant details, in fluency and coherence, we think about like the details that the student gives. Is it relevant to the topic or is it a little bit off topic? And, you know, it's fine to say that my friend gave me these Dr. Martens for my 20th birthday, and then to say maybe it's okay to say 20th birthday is important in Japan, but we don't want to go too far away from the central topic.
So my friend celebrated me so big party, and it was
She celebrated me so big party. I don't know. She celebrated by giving me or by throwing me such a big party, maybe.
so fun, and I very happy to. I very happy, and I have that shoes for 1 year,
Those shoes, singular, plural. This, that, singular. These, those, plural.
and I bring to Australia too.
I bring is present simple. You mean past time I brought. I brought them to Australia too.
Because it gave me every time gave me energy,
So it gave me energy in the past, so they give me energy in the present. So we get it's a lot of confusion over present time or past time.
like because I went to Disneyland with my best friends to
So they give me energy because I went to Disneyland with my best friend. So I think there's a faulty, a problematic connection, logical connection with those sentences or clauses.
wear my shoes. So that shoes is very important to
Those shoes are, not that shoes is.
me. Important, like very that gave me a lot of energy for me.
Repetition of idea.
And my friend gave me another things too.
Okay, so this is something the most obvious sign. Not all. Sometimes high level students do this too, but it annoys me. Not really annoys me. Describe something you own. Just talk about one thing. Don't speak about one thing for 1 minute and then realize like, oh, I have another minute. I'm gonna talk about something else. Train. If you're taking IELTS, prepare. Try to understand what 2 minutes is. Try to understand how to plan for your speaking part two, so you can make a little structure in your head about like, oh, maybe I'm going to spend 1 minute answering the first three questions and then 1 minute answering the last question. Many different ways of planning work, but planning is important and time management is important. So Koto's decided she's talked enough about her Dr. Martens shoes and she's going to speak about something else.
Like the very cute bear stuffs that has a
Bear stuff. Or bear stuffs, she said.
name, my name on
Maybe a stuffed bear. Maybe.
that bear. So I have two things. I'm sorry, I changed it.
So you can see she's stepping out of her monologue now, right? So now she's in the monologue talking about the things that are very important, and now she's stepped out to say like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm speaking about two things. This again shows an inability to speak at length, fluently.
I have two important things.
I
I
know.
have important one of the shoes
I
and
know.
one of the stuffs.
I know.
Very, very cute bear stuffs. So yeah, my friend gave me for my birthday
I
present.
know, I
Okay,
know.
thank you.
No.
And how often do you wear your Doc
So I sympathise with Koto. She's
Martens?
I spoke to Koto afterwards and before, and we spoke about how much preparation she'd done, and she hasn't done much preparation. She doesn't know too much about the format of the exam and things like this. And this is where really having a teacher to prepare you for IELTS can really, really help with this. That once you know the format, you're not surprised by anything. You've trained, you've practiced many, many times, and you don't then freak out. So she's freaking out a little bit. For just out of interest, Koto did her real IELTS today, this morning, I think. So I don't know what score she's got, but hopefully I'll find out soon. But definitely, if you're planning to take IELTS, even if you're a good speaker, become familiar with the exam before you take it, because it's not a cheap exam to take.
Like the once a week, but now in Australia it's winter, so sometimes I wear that, but maybe last month I was wearing once a week or like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, so that's the end of part two. So she ran out of ideas. She couldn't really fill the 2 minutes, but she did maybe all right. Quite disconnected. Same problems as part one, so I'm not changing my mind. Everything is the same. Problems with the L, problems with the R, basic grammar mistakes. Generally decent pronunciation, connects her speech pretty well. Nothing amazing in terms of like discourse markers of signposting language, like firstly, secondly, and another thing, and on top of that, and by the way, and incidentally, and one more thing. And I would just like to add, we get none of those like little bits of language that help connect our ideas together. But in general, she's enough vocab to deal with the task in an adequate way, kind of.
All right, so you've been speaking about something you own, which is very important to you. Now let's talk about possessions in general. What kind of possessions give people status in your country?
Position, it means the job is right. Position.
Possession is something you have, something you own.
Okay.
So in part three, you can engage with the examiner a little bit. If you don't understand a word, you can ask the examiner to clarify. It should be a discussion.
Mm, I think like for male, the watch gave like the someone has
So I don't know why past the watch gave status. I don't know why she's talking about the past. Gives in the present in general, right?
very expensive watch. It means they have a lot of money.
If somebody gave, I don't know why she used gave here then. Okay, but fine.
And for a female, like a lot of expensive bags, expensive jewelries,
Jewelry again. We missed this L, but that's fine.
or like that. That is that explain about the food has a money or like that. Yeah.
And
So a little bit underdeveloped here, right? So she's saying that if men have expensive watches, or if women have, or females have expensive bags or jewelry, this shows that they have a lot of money. But maybe tie that to status. So the question was, what gives them status? So you could add something like, well, in my culture, people who have a lot of money have a lot of status, and so you can show people that you have a lot of money by buying some expensive things. Men tend to buy expensive watches, whereas women buy designer bags, things like this. That would be a better answer, linking it to status.
do you agree that having a lot of expensive things means that a person is successful in life?
Uh, I think so, but
So I like this I think so, not I think yes, I think so. It's a good example of substitution.
that is very difficult question
I know it's a difficult question. Many of these questions have been difficult, Koto, and you have told me many, many times that the question is difficult.
for me. I think like someone has a lot of expensive jewelries or like watches or like bag. It means they're so rich. But
R and L, leech. So she can do the L. It's just that she says L when she should say R, and she says R when she should say L. But Koto is not alone with this. Many people in Asia and specifically in Japan have this problem. I don't know why it happens, but that's fine. It happens.
Someone to spend the money for education for children. So I think
Education. I like the j, education. She doesn't pronounce it like education, but education. So this is a feature in pronunciation that we call assimilation, where letters change their sound depending on how easy it is to get out. There are reasons why we do this assimilation, but it is a part of something we call connected speech. When we speak at speed, those are some things that we have. We have different features like eliding or elision. We have assimilation. We have things like intrusion. We have things like catenation. So if you're a really hardcore linguist, you know, or teacher or examiner, you know about all of these things and you're looking out for them. And just a little education, the education, it's nice.
both are late, so very difficult to explain and very difficult to answer this question.
Okay, you need to stop telling me that questions are difficult to answer. I'm sorry.
And do you think people nowadays have become too materialistic?
I'm sorry, I can't understand materialistics.
I love that response. She doesn't panic. She just, I'm sorry, I can't understand materialistic. Great, nice.
Do you think people care too much about the things that they own?
They
So she has big problems with comprehension here. She just can't understand the question. You know, I've tried a very simple paraphrase.
want to wear expensive things.
Do you think people care more about things or
So I'm trying one more paraphrase here. Do you think people care more about things or about people? Hoping that, you know, it's the same kind of question, but just formulated in a different way. Maybe we'll get an answer this
about
time.
people?
Sorry, I can't understand the meaning.
Okay, so at this point, I just don't care. I'll just move to another question. It's fine.
That's okay. Let's move on and talk about advertising. Do you think that advertising can influence the things that we want to have?
Advertise. I'm sorry, what is advertising?
So I'm shocked that Koto doesn't know what advertising is because she's spoken fairly well so far. Now, advertising is one very, very common theme when you study general English. When you get to like B1, B2, you start discussing the role of advertising. So adverts, advertising, commercial, like ads. I'm sure you've heard of ads, pop-up ads and things like this. So for me, it's really amazing that she doesn't know the word advertising.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So advertising are things like commercials.
So knowing that she has some American English pronunciation, I thought, okay, maybe she'll know the word commercials, which is like the American English form of advertising. And I think she gets it.
So it means the commercial give us a lot of information about expensive things.
Well, do you think it
So even though she doesn't understand, I still like the way that she's responding. This is a discussion, and so sometimes in discussions, you don't know what the other person says. You have to clarify, you have to ask, and I like the fact that she is attempting to clarify some of those terms with me. So even though she doesn't give a full, direct answer to the question, I still like the fact that she's engaging in conversation with me.
it changes the things that we want to buy?
I think yes. It depends on the things. Like it is my opinion. I really like Chinese.
I very like Johnny's. Really like, but Johnny's? Don't know.
The male idol girl, and
The male idol go? I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying.
if they're introduced like something about the pen or like makeup things, I would really want to buy that.
Okay, so we get a direct answer to the question now. She's giving an example of when famous people promote a product, it influences the things that she wants. So that is a direct answer to the question, finally.
Items. So I think it some commercial change our mind, want to buy that. Yeah.
Hmm. And finally, how do you think advertising might change in the future?
Mm, okay. Mm,
So she's really struggling with these part three questions. But I mean, Koto is young, right? She's 20, 21 years old, and sometimes it can be really, really difficult to think of these questions. You know, how might advertising change in the future? It's not something we think about every day, but keep in mind, every IELTS question is there for a reason. The grammatical reason here is like, can you use language to predict the future? Like will probably, is likely to, might. But also, can you think on your feet? Can you produce an answer to a question that you don't really think about very often? After the test, I spoke to Koto and she said that she would have problems answering these questions in Japanese, and it's like, yeah, because this is how we tell the difference between like a 7 and an 8, for example, right? Like an 8 can still provide a very, very satisfactory answer with to a question that they've never thought about. They have the linguistic resources to deal with that pressure of, oh, I don't know, I don't know the correct answer to this question, but I have enough linguistic resources that I can deal with it. Lower level learners just freak out and say, well, if I can't answer it in my first language, how do you think I can answer it in my second language? Well, it's a test.
very difficult question, like the how to change. Mm,
Do you think we will have
no,
more advertising in the future?
I I think so, but now already have a lot of advertising in on the internet or on the TV, everything. Like, but I think it become more advertising.
So she's using the word advertising now, so it's clear that she knows the word advertising. Maybe she just didn't understand my pronunciation.
In future because and to use like very
And also, she said it become instead of like it has become or it is becoming, just it become. Very lazy grammatical structure.
famous model or like famous idol, and that is very good for customers to buy. Like it is just my reason. I always buy items who like I really like K-pop, so some K-pop idol introduce about makeup things. I always want to buy that. So that is
So she's found, we call it a second wind. So, you're fresh, you're fine, and then you feel very tired and you performance level drops and then it increases. We call this your second wind. Nice bit of idiomatic language. She has found her second wind here. It's just a shame that it's a pity that it comes just right at the end of the test.
very good things, and in the future it will be like that. I think so. More advertising in the future.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the test.
Alrighty then. So maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I used to be very strict with my scores, and my scores compared to some other examiners, I was a little like other examiners were giving higher scores than me, and so I've started to become a little bit more generous, and I found that nowadays the scores that I give are much more in line with what other examiners give. And for instance, with I've asked some of the previous candidates about their scores from IELTS, and it's nice that the scores that they get in their real IELTS are matching with the scores that I'm giving them. I feel like maybe I've been a little bit too generous with Koto's scores, but let's have a look at the scores that I've given her. It's very possible that she'll get maybe a little less than this, but fluency and coherence. So I think she shows a willingness to speak at length. She does have to rely on repetition, so she can't speak at length without really repeating her ideas, but I still feel like she has enough readiness to speak at length. She doesn't break down too much. It's not always perfect and clear, and it's a bit clumsy how she adds on bits of information at the end, but her ability to speak at length is okay. Her answers are generally easy enough to understand, easy to follow. I think she could link her ideas better, but okay, fine. I think there is enough for a 6 here. Lexical resource, this one could definitely be a 5, but generous. Glyn is giving her a 6. So I think from part 1, she had more than enough vocabulary with the personal questions. And even in part 2, her vocab kind of dropped off a little bit. And in part 3, it was more of a, not a disaster, but it was weaker in part 3. But I still felt like she had adequate vocabulary. It wasn't always perfect, but there were some nice points, like sightseeing spots. There were opportunities that she really missed, also talking about work, like workers come to Yokohama to work. It's like, cool. Grammatical range and accuracy, I've dropped that to 5. The first time when I was just speaking, when I was just doing the test, I thought, maybe there's enough for a 6 in there. I didn't notice any like catastrophic errors, but then after rewatching and re-listening, yeah, a lot more errors, and certainly no more than a 5. Just, she does have complex sentences, especially with relative clauses. Maybe you don't know what complex sentences are. It's fine. Look it up. Sentences with 2 subjects, like the person who I like the most is blah, blah, blah. Or embedded questions, like I'm not sure if they are going to come. No complex structures. So complex structures like want somebody to do something, or see somebody doing something, or I wish I had done something. You don't get any of that. You know, the grammar that you might study at B2, you at upper intermediate, you don't get any of those constructions at all. So yeah, not a huge, not very ambitious with grammar. Nothing that kills the lack of grammar doesn't really kill the meaning. Some points it's like, I have 2 shoes now. It's like, okay, kind of confusing, but not really. So 5 for grammatical range and accuracy. Pronunciation was really tricky because we had that repeated mistake, and I could see that maybe an examiner would give her no more than a 6 for this, but I do feel like she had like a decent range of phonological features despite the repeated mistakes. And I also felt like some aspects of her chunking and connected speech, the American English influence there shone through in a few parts, and so I felt like maybe there could be enough pronunciation for a 7, but I wouldn't be surprised if she got a 6. So overall, I've given her a 6. Maybe a more realistic score is a 5.5, but this one is interesting because, as I say, Koto's taking her, or has taken her test today, and so I will find out what I will ask her to tell me what score she got, just out of interest. So things to improve. I know it's too late, but don't repeat your ideas so much. Secondly, in part 2, if you're asked to speak about one thing, speak about one thing, not 2. 3, don't waste chances with vocabulary. If there's a question about technology, try to think like, okay, what words connected to technology can I show off here? Of course, we want to do it in a natural way, but, you know, the same themes come up: environment, education, free time, technology, internet, things like this. Try to use some vocabulary connected to those topics. And number 4, really try to be more attentive just to the basic grammatical concepts. Always tell my students, just get it right with present simple, present continuous, past simple, future be going to, future will, maybe a couple of conditional sentences, nothing too difficult, modal verbs, basic gerunds, basic infinitives, all of the A2 grammar. If you get all of the pre-intermediate grammar 100% accurate, you will get a very good score, believe it or not, at IELTS. Singular nouns, plural nouns, countable nouns, uncountable nouns, those things are killing your grammatical accuracy here. So those are my scores. I admit that this was maybe a bit generous to give her a 6. If anyone is watching and they have any comments or any of their own opinions, you're welcome to add them. But that ends the tasks in May. So in May, I decided to focus on speaking. Certainly, we will come back to speaking on this channel in a couple of months. I certainly want to give a few tips for candidates. So instead of just checking and giving feedback on performance. Maybe there are a few tips that we could look at in a few months. But in June, the focus is shifting to writing. And so this means we'll look at IELTS General, IELTS Academic, we'll look at Task 1, we'll look at Task 2. And if you have... I had a few responses for speaking, but not so many. But I expect that I'll get a few more responses for the writing thing, because everyone wants to have their writing checked. But if you are interested, if you want me to check your writing and to give you feedback, do feel free to get in touch. But for today, I will leave it there. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful evening, day, afternoon, wherever you may be. Thanks. Bye-bye.